What happened to Beaks? Released less than 3 months before this video's production, Beaks was touted as the next Fisch and started with relatively high player counts, but yet dropped off within less than a month. How? Following a fairly simple core gameplay loop, Beaks would have players shoot birds of varying rarity, sizes, and mutations from the sky to either keep and show off or sell. Speaking of mutations, players also had the option to get mutations from a wishing well filled with magical radioactive pee. The money earned from these birds could then be used to buy new rifles, which were either more powerful, could shoot faster or farther, or darts, which would alter the rifle's performance. But above all was probably how calm and beautiful the game appeared on first glance. Yo, leave the birds alone! This is supposed to be the peaceful part! Okay, well, poaching birds aside, the game itself was actually really peaceful, yes, but that might have actually been its downfall, because maybe it was a little too peaceful. The game was so caught up in trying to maintain that feeling of peace that it feels like it forgot about having fun and engaging gameplay. Because clearly, users weren't staying, with an average retention of 10 minutes and 51 seconds. Barely enough or less than enough to finish the tutorial. This can be attributed to how the game's core mechanics worked. The birds would spawn in very large numbers, which, while there are very rare birds, the problem is the sample sizes were so large that rare birds became a very common sighting, making them not exciting to catch. Similarly, rare mutations were also not that exciting, which made players not feel inclined to go ahead and try and get the rarest bird ever. And worse than that, even the rare birds would barely sell for anything, which brings me on to my next point. Progression was really slow, and when I say slow, I mean slow as a snail. You could spend 3 hours in the game and only be at level 13. You're not even you're like barely even a quarter of the way through the game. This wouldn't have been an issue if it weren't for the fact that most of the items in the game needed to progress were level locked. And with how slow level progression was, it became pretty clear pretty quick that this game was attempting to farm playtime off of its users. The problem with this, even though other games already do this, was that Beaks didn't have a lot of content and was instead attempting to stretch the small amount it did have over a longer period of time, which just doesn't work. Players know when they're working towards essentially nothing, and that explains why, even though the progression speed of this game would suggest that you need to play at least half an hour per session to make any meaningful progress, that players just aren't. The final nail in the coffin for this game, though? One word: bugs. On its first major update, which caused the player count to go back up slightly, they added quests. These quests were broken. If you already completed a journal for, say, a journal completion quest where you have to get all the birds for an area, if you're already done, it wouldn't give you the reward. Oh yeah, and that clip of me selling the parrot earlier for $0? Yeah, that was also a bug that came about during this update. And with this being players' first experience with a content release from this publisher after initial release, it made them lose faith in the game for future updates. After this, the game wouldn't see any more resurgences of players. Sure, there was one more major update, but I'm not going to talk about it. because it was so disappointing that it only brought the player count back up for a single day. And that's the disappearance of Beaks. If you like the video, please, pretty please hit the like button. It really helps. And if you really like me and want to see more stuff from me, hit the sub. Yeah. I'll see you guys probably in a few days when I release my next video.